her YouTube channel as well. So if there's people that you know that really need to see this, you can always access it there as well. And I will send that out in the notes later. So today's episode is episode number 4, which is super exciting that we've already gone to 4 episodes of Her.Ignite, and it's closing the confidence gap, turning fear into fuel. So we're going to dive into some of the science-backed information from this book, and you'll learn that while there is some biology and science in that regard to how we operate and how we think and how we act in our everyday lives, there is a lot of it that is that can be learned and affected by just going out there and trying it and not letting fear stop you. So let's dive into it. If you guys have questions as we go along, please just put a comment in the chat or raise your hand so that I see it, and I will definitely stop and answer questions. But I will give 10 minutes at the end for any question, any Q&A. But thank you so much for being here. Let's dive in. Okay, let's see. I'm kind of new to doing it the other way around. Okay, everyone can see this. It's not cutting off or anything. We good? Okay.
All good.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So this is what we're going to go over today. So within this book, we go over the introduction and the purpose. What is confidence truly? I think a lot of times as women, we assume confidence in a more negative light sometimes. And so that often will stop us from doing what we really in our heart feel that we can do, and we know we can do. We have the ability to do. So learn the core principles of the confidence code. Leave with actionable tools to enhance your professional acumen, and then we'll do the final tips and takeaway. All right. I'm using 2 different screens here, so I gotta do both. Okay, so there we go. So why does confidence matter? I think it's really important for us, especially as women in the workforce. We are given a lot of different messages as we navigate the professional world. And I think part of that comes from, our cultural background initially and our history of our roles as women in the home, and not really having all the choices 100 years ago that we have today, but really understanding how to navigate this world like a man does, and being in a man's world, and really being able to show our confidence is not show that our confidence is not an arrogant thing. It's actually a skill, and it's actually something that can really make or break your career. And it's all starts by, taking that first step and just going with it. So what is confidence? It's so interesting as you start to read this book. It's funny how even the authors, they were, when they come together and they write their notes, since there's 2 of them, and then they come back together, they realized how they themselves were also, torn on what that confidence was and how they negatively postured some of their approaches. So what is confidence? Confidence is the bridge between what you think and what you actually do. So, sometimes we step back and we think that there's this, magic thing like I talked about, but in reality, it's just not letting our fears and all that stop us. And it's all about action and all that we can, actually taking that step, being, brave enough to talk within the boardroom or whatever that looks like. So it's action. Lack of confidence, not a lack of ability, often holds people back, especially women, back from opportunities and advancement. And, there's been a couple of studies in this book showing that that is actually true. So, and we'll get into some of those. Confidence influences career progression, risk-taking, and resilience after setbacks. And nowhere did you see on there that confidence is arrogant or narcissistic. So don't let that even, come into the equation, because I think as women, it's easy for us to kind of give it a negative connotation sometimes. And that's just from our cultural upbringing and all of our individual unique experiences as women. All right. Okay. Um, so confidence is, I'm going to give you the definition, one of the definitions that they give in the book. Confidence is an essential ingredient, very complex, and is rooted in our DNA. It comes from action through practice. All right. So, um, and one thing to take note, and a big part of it is confidence versus competence. So your actual skills, knowledge, and performance is your competence, what your abilities are. Your confidence is your belief that you can apply those skills effectively when it counts. And the authors argued that confidence is more important than competence in how others perceive you and what opportunities you pursue. So this is important to distinguish because, and they talk about this, oftentimes what happens is we as women won't try for things or go for things as quickly or as often as men do, whether it's on tests in school, whether it's in the boardroom, whether it's just asking for that raise. Because if we don't feel like we have all the skills, every single one of the skills 100%, then we either shrink back and don't talk about it or don't even try to even answer the questions. So women have long believed that if we just work harder and don't cause any trouble, our natural talents will shine through and be rewarded. But this is a false dichotomy. How many of you have felt that way before? Like, just raise your hand. Like, I feel like, or put it in the comments, put it in the chats, because I feel like many of us have probably felt that way, right? Where we think that, oh, if I just buckle down, put my head down and work really, really hard, then I'll get promoted and people will see that and they will promote me. And that has been proven through study after study that that is not the case. And actually, they did a study at a couple of the different universities and they showcase them in the book. And one in particular that was really interesting to me was Carnegie Mellon. They did, no, this one is the University of Milan, actually. And a psychologist there, he did the study. And what his study was showing is he took 500 men and women and coming out of school, they're getting ready to graduate from college. And what he did is he had them do these, he had them take a set of tests and answer all the questions for these tests. And then he asked them what they expected to make once they graduated college. And the men, they immediately and quicker responded, and they had high expectations for what they wanted, and they expected they were going to make about 80K when they graduated. Where women, on average, they estimated that they were going to make 64K. So that's a huge difference. And it showcases that women, we tend to lower our expectations, even though we are just as competent as the men. And so I think it's a new language we need to teach ourselves within our own minds, that even if you feel like you don't know the answer or feel like you don't have all the qualifications, to answer it anyways, because they also showed that even when they answered that they usually were right. But many times the women did not answer some of the questions. And so they scored lower. So it's very interesting to see how men and women operate, and we are different, so it's just understanding those differences so that we can too grab onto that and go with it, right? All right. They also say the big things that they say between competence and confidence in the book is, when in doubt, act. Nothing builds confidence like taking action, especially when the action involves risk and failure. Action separates the timid from the bold and in turn builds confidence. Have you guys experienced, and I'm sure you all have, think back in boardrooms, companies you've worked with, where you've encountered a male colleague that's in the same role as you, but they always speak up in every single meeting, right? And oftentimes they're not as competent as you, and you know it, but yet they speak up and they still get the accreditation and the kudos for doing that, even if they're wrong. There's still this impression that they know more than you do. And that's been proven in many studies. So that's one thing we're trying to overcome, especially when you read through some of the examples and stories, you will see yourself in that situation. Because I know in my past that there's been many times in boardrooms where I know I'm competent, but I don't speak up, and they do sound more confident than me, and they know more. And in reality, they probably don't. So it's just understanding that dichotomy, that you really do have a lot more value and competence than you think you do. So speak up and you'll surprise yourself. Okay, the confidence gap. So this one was interesting for me. Oops. Okay. Women tend to attribute their own success to luck. They doubt whether they deserve to be where they are at. Women use disclaimers when sharing value statements often, and they downplay promotions or success. When I read all of these, I was like, oh, I've done that. I've done that, So it's interesting to notice that in yourself, that now that you know and you're aware of it, now hopefully we can stop those, the language in our head and start thinking a little differently. Studies cited in the book show that women often underestimate their abilities and hesitate more before acting, while men tend to overestimate their abilities and act sooner. And it doesn't matter, it shows in the book, it doesn't matter whether they're right or not, they still are perceived as more confident. And that, in the end, is what leaders look for and hire and promote and do all of those things, because people want to be led, right? It's interesting because when I got remarried a couple of years ago, I was always so amazed by him because he always sounded so confident. And I'm like, you just have this confidence and authoritative speak in how you talk. And he's like, well, why not? I know what I'm doing. And I'm going to just be true and authentic to myself. And I was like, huh. And it got me thinking, and people love him. And people, he's very well known in the industry. He's very well liked. But he doesn't allow any of those fears come in and tell him in his brain, oh, well, talk quieter or talk less about yourself, because that usually comes out negative. And women, we do it all the time, and we don't realize, even when we don't realize we're doing it, right? So, one important difference between men versus women. For women, a lack of confidence can produce rumination. How many of you ruminate? Something bad happens yesterday at work in a meeting, and you ruminate it for a whole week, right? I think we can all raise our hand to that. We'll just sit and just worry about what we did wrong. And then oftentimes that results in paralysis, to where we just don't raise our hand, or we don't answer the question on the test, the final. Because part of that, which was uncovered in the book, is that we suffer from perfectionism. And while men, doubt is often the catalyst for action. So that is the difference. Doubt for women means I'm going to over prepare, I'm going to overstudy, I'm going to get down to every single detail to make sure everything is perfect on everything. And oftentimes we don't get it done in time, or we procrastinate because our perfectionism is giving us such anxiety and depression that we can't move forward. And where for men, just part of it is because of their brain anatomy and how they work and think. But that doubt and fear causes them to act and causes them to go the other direction. Women tend to shrink back and men tend to push forward. So that's a big part of it to recognize. This confidence gap contributes to fewer women going for promotions, raises, or visible stretch assignments within their careers. Any questions so far, everyone? All right. So the core principles. These are the 3 main simple principles that they go through in the book. All right. First one, act. When you are feeling that fear and you're feeling like maybe I don't know it as well as I think I do, when you start to feel that imposter syndrome, the best advice is to act, do it anyways. And an example for me is I was in the industry for about 12 years, and then I got divorced. I had 3 small children. My youngest was 3, and I was the full caretaker and working full time. In fact, I was in grad school at the time when I got divorced, and I had to figure it out. Like, I think that fear, I felt it every single day so strongly in my chest. I can think back and remember so well how much that fear, fed into me every single day, but every single morning. And I tell this to my girls now, every single morning I got up 6 a.m. I got them ready, sent them to 3 different schools. I got into the office and I worked, even on days when I really felt like I didn't know what I was talking about. And I tell them, and I did it day after day after day, year after year after year. And now finally, 25 years down, my career, I finally am to an aha where I'm like, oh, I guess I do know what I'm talking about. I guess I really do understand title insurance. I do belong here. I do have value here. And it's taken me a long time, but I did it every day through fear, through imposter syndrome. And I think that is one of the best advice they give in this book, is to just act. Number 2, don't overthink it. I know when I started the Her Collective, it's been challenging. It's been up and down. There's been, naysayers. There's been lots of support, but there's been both sides of it. And I never planned to start Her Collective. It just kind of happened, and I felt like I was the catalyst in bringing forth this group to really empower women and give them tools and support and empowerment through our examples, through our experiences. And that is what drives me, because I know what I needed when I started in title. But there's been times where I sit and ruminate and I overthink often. Did I do the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? I always worry about, am I doing the right thing? Am I truly being authentic? And I pray for that all the time. Be authentic, do the right thing, and things will start to grow and really affect people and help people. And I've learned a lot just in the last 2 years of running Her, a lot about that, and not allowing those thoughts and the ruminations to sit in, because we do that. We all do that, right? And it's very easy to get caught up in that. So, and then the third one is be authentic. And I think that if you are true to yourself and you're authentic, people feel that. And it doesn't even matter the words that they say sometimes. People will feel that come through you, because you are being true to your authentic self, right? And that's hard to do, especially hard to do in the work world for women, and especially minority women. When you're a part of so many different minority groups, there has been decades and decades and decades of conditioning and language that's been put out there that, are barriers that we have to overcome, that oftentimes men don't. They're not built that way in their brain structure like we are. And they don't have those limitations that were once there for women that we have, whether we acknowledge them or not. They're there, and that holds us back as well. And so just learning to be authentic to yourself and your learning and continual learning will help you just take off. So those are the 3 things. If you leave nothing from class today, those 3 things would be the one thing I would say to notate and write down, because it's true. We, like I said in the beginning, we want it to be some magic formula, but really it's simple. It's a simple formula. All right, let's move on. Okay, so principle number 1, take action. Confidence is built through action and not reflection alone. Doing hard things, it will rewire your belief and what you can handle. And it truly does. They've had a couple different studies that truly show how it can change how the serotonin levels, the oxytocin, and all of that operate. Those hormones work within your brain. They've done studies on that to prove that you can build that confidence muscle, so to speak, by the way you think and stopping your thoughts and all those things. So the book underscores the value of risk-taking, volunteering, speaking up, and failing fast as a core confidence practice. Failing fast is something that has been long used in the tech world in Silicon Valley, to where when a lot of these internet businesses started to come out in the early days, they learned that you need to fail fast, because once you fail fast, then you find the solution and the correct way faster. And it's all about being the first guy out there on the block, right? I remember when the social media really started to hit the internet, and then one would hit, and then another one almost exactly like it would hit, 6 months later. And there's constantly more and more competition out there. And so that's why they're saying fail fast. Get out there and do it. And that's one thing I've always taught in my social media classes. I taught social media from 2008 on, how to set it up, how to operate, how to utilize it, how to market, how to have that plan in place. And one thing I always taught my students was that don't worry about making sure the language and the content is absolutely perfect before you put it out there. And that was a big fear for a lot of people, especially when they put it in writing on their social media posts, or when they, say it in their videos that they're going to do. And I'm not saying not prepare. Definitely prepare. But that was one of the biggest fears that they would always come to me. Prepare and then go. Don't hold off or procrastinate because of your fear of not being perfect, or your fear of not, being enough on it, which is what we commonly do. And so that really does fit well into what we're doing as well. If you're going to try a new, just whatever that is, if you're going to, I'm going to teach my first class, or I'm going to get out there and I'm going to do, my first series of seminars like this. They say to do it quickly and to just keep doing it, because you're going to learn from it, you're going to build from it, and you never know the people you're going to touch and you're connect along the way with that. So, and then the third thing, small repeated acts of courage compound into the confident identity. All right. So with it being the new year, how many of you have had to do business planning and plan out your goals for the year? Everyone? Anyone? Raise your hand if that's you. And hopefully, I'm asking if each of you can identify one stretch action, and I want you to write it down, one stretch action that you want to take this year. And I want you to leave that pinned up on your computer, on your desk, so that every day you read that and you remind myself, okay, this is what I really want to overcome this year, and this is what I really want to accomplish in the next 6 months, or maybe it's 2 months, whatever that might be. Just one. And so often it takes small little steps to get us there. All right. Okay. So, principle number 2. I'm using 2 screens, so that always keeps popping up when my mouse moves. All right. Don't ruminate, but rewire. Overthinking amplifies your doubt. It focuses on the worst case scenarios, and it delays your action. I know that I suffer hugely from procrastination. And I think a part of it I learned through reading and constantly having that learning growth mindset, that I do that because of my past life of being a perfectionist, OCD, very much a perfectionist. And I don't ever want to come across like I'm stupid or I'm an idiot or whatever those words that keep on going on in our head happen, which happen to all of us, right? And then what it does is it delays me from actually taking action. So that is a big killer. Perfectionism and rumination are key confidence killers that are highlighted in this book. So what we're going to try to learn today is how to stop that, how to stop it in its tracks. Confidence grows when you shorten the time between intention and action and treat decisions as experiments, not final verdict. So men on average have more confidence than women. We all know that. And we don't need, studies. They shared a lot of studies, but we don't need to see those studies to know that that is true, right? And a large part of that is due to their brain matter and their brain functioning. But a large part of it is also due to them just not letting that fear stop them, which is a big thing for women. Women tend to lose confidence when there is a stereotype against them. We can all agree, we've experienced that. Confidence is very important to life success, and it's not an arrogant thing. It is. They learned in this book through looking at biology as well as psychology that confidence is inborn, and but it's also partly a nurture, building muscle as well. So you can work it. You can work on it and increase it. So that's great news, right? Because we all want to figure out how to build our confidence. All right. The third principle is being authentic. And she writes in the book, she calls them gnats. Kill all those gnats. NAT. And what those are is negative automatic thoughts that we all have. Often women just seem to have the spotlight thing backward. This is a quote from the book. We want to shine a bright light on our faults, insecurities, and the outlandish reasons we will surely fail. But when it comes to taking credit or enjoying our triumphs, we step into the shadows, looking askance at our accomplishments as though we've never seen them before. We need to develop a sense of our own well-deserved value. And the act of doing this, of hearing ourselves recognize our accomplishments, bolsters confidence. Just the act of actually saying that I have value, I did this, and I accomplished this, helps bolster your confidence. So, and with that, authenticity builds on top of those two other, action, and then stop ruminating. Authenticity is the third one that builds upon that. Authentic confidence is grounded in your values, your strengths, and in a realistic sense of self, not in pretending to be someone else. When behavior matches values, people experience less imposter syndrome and more stable confidence. And the book encourages embracing your imperfections and being honest about your limits while stepping forward. So one example that they give, and one that I've used often in my career and in my life, especially when I became a single mom and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm not going to I can't fail. Like failure wasn't even an option, right? I had 3 kids to support. So one thing I started doing was keeping a journal. So how many of you keep a journal? Does anybody keep a journal, a daily journal, or even if it's a weekly journal on what it is that you want to accomplish? Or what they talked about is, one thing is to acknowledge where you feel like your faults are. Verbally say them out loud. Write them down in the journal and acknowledge those thoughts. Then you can take control of them, right? So they have you do an exercise in the journal and write down, those thoughts are going on in your head, the top 5 things that you're thinking of, right? That are your faults. Cross them out and you write the positive version of viewing that same comment. And see what that does to your mindset. It'll change. It'll change the way you're thinking about it. And you'll think, oh, it'll stop you in your tracks, and it will help you to come back to your authentic self and be like, wait a second. I need to stop thinking like this, because every time I think like this, whether I know it or not, when I go to that next conference and I'm thinking that, and then right before I go to talk to someone, something else blurts out because I'm thinking the negative comment, right? I know I've done that. I mean, I did so many conferences last year, and no matter how much I prepare, how confident I may feel, or how a part of that conference I feel, when the thoughts start running in my head and I get insecure or worried how someone's going to look at my clothes or whatever and think, like I broke an L on the plane yesterday, and I'd be in a meeting and that would probably worry me the whole entire time, and versus ignoring that and changing that language that's in your head, right? And men don't do that. How many, I mean, it's just like when they compared to, they went to, in the book, they go and they study the Magic, which is a WNBA team. And they talked with them and really tried to get a feel for, they're at this highest level of professional basketball, right? And they've got to be confident. They got to know the secret to being confident, right? These women that, first of all, basketball and sports in general at a professional level has always been more of a male dominated sport. So when the WNBA came out, it was a big uphill, battle for them to get known and to get seen. So they go and they talk to some of these players, some of the biggest players, and they all mentioned how even after they have a great game, they go back to the locker room and what's running through their head is what they did wrong. Some of the top players in the industry for WNBA still stand back, and that's what they're worried about, and they'll worry about it for days, and that's what they focus on, even though they may have won the game. And they also said that the players said that men, what they do is they take that thought and they throw it out and they said, okay, I'm going to do it better next time. and they just take action and they go practice harder and they let that thought go. It's just like when, men have a disagreement, they call each other names, they hit each other, punch each other, whatever, and then they move on. Women don't women don't do that, right? We have to think about it. We have to stew over it, and then we come back and, oh, I should have said this. And we don't just stop it in its tracks and move forward. And that's the biggest thing. Even at the highest levels of whatever industry you're in, women, they still do the same thing. So be encouraged that we're not alone, and it's a battle that we all face as women. Okay. The role of failure. Failure is framed as a necessary teacher. We've all heard this a million times, and I think it's notable to remind us again that repeated attempts at setbacks and recovery, all those things, that's really building your confidence. It's building your resilience. It's showing you that even when I felt for years and years and years like I was stupid and really didn't know what I was doing, but I kept showing up and somehow I succeeded. You need to reframe those thoughts in your mind and realize you were competent. You did know more than you thought you knew. And that will start to build your confidence every single day. Fail fast, which we talked about. In the book, it says testing your ideas quickly, learning, and moving on rather than avoiding risk or dwelling on those mistakes. When I started Her Collective, I wasn't working for a short time because I'd moved from Colorado to Texas. And my husband just encouraged me. He goes, if you feel this calling in your heart and this is what you want to do, is to really, I just wanted to highlight women and showcase women's stories and share their stories, because I think there's power in that. I think there's power for that individual to realize how much she's accomplished, but also power in that with communicating to people within our industry and outside of our industry what this industry can be for them, what it can bring for their lives if they can just share those stories and hear. It does a lot for us in giving us empowerment and encouragement to do the same thing, right? And inspire us to take on that next big risk that we're trying to take on. So that's an important one to remember. At least it was for me. And the more you experience manageable failures, the less you fear them. And you will be more likely to act and move forward with the next step and the next step, right? All right. This is the big killer for us women, I tell you. Perfectionism and self-doubt. I think this is one that many of us, most of us, really feel this one strong, right? All right. So I'm going to go back to the study that they did at the University of Milan that I mentioned in the beginning. The psychologist, his name was Zach Estes. And what he did specifically is he did a series of tests involving the 500 students. This is one of the studies he did to reorganize 3D images on a computer screen. Testing this theory, his theory that confidence can be manipulated and in some areas have, it showed that women have in some areas, manipulated. In some areas, women have less confidence. And he wanted to know why. He wanted to figure out why, and why sometimes men have overconfidence when they're not competent. So kind of both sides of the scale. And in his findings, what he found is that women scored measurably worse than the men. But then when he went back and he looked at their actual answers to the different questions, he found that the reason the women were doing less was that they didn't even attempt to answer the question, which is huge. I know I have taken many tests where there's many questions I never answered, right? And if I had just answered them, who knows, I probably would have done a lot better by just answering them. And that's what he found in this study. He then told them that they had to at least try and solve all the puzzles. And guess what? Their scores shot up. And in fact, they did as well as the men. So the natural results of underconfidence is inaction. When women don't act, when we hesitate because we aren't sure, even by skipping a few questions, we hold ourselves back, and that matters. Our fears and failures lead to inaction, thus guaranteeing failure. So one thing that they talk about is to kind of follow the 90% rule, if you guys have ever heard of that, act when something is good enough rather than waiting for perfect. And that's a hard thing for us to do because we're so expected to be the perfect moms and wear all the hats, to look perfect. Our hair has to be perfect, our makeup, our nails, whatever. Nowadays, Botox and the new, all these things, right? To make us beautiful. So we have that. We have being the mom and being the perfect mom to our kids. And we give ourselves so much pressure in that regard. And then we also have a job and we want to do the best at our job and be the best at our job. And we don't want to look like a fool and we want to help people because that's how our brains are wired, to be nurturers and really truly help people. So there's all these things bouncing around for us, right? And I think that when we can take a step back and not let the self-doubts within that affect us and the perfectionism, I hate that word because it was such a plague for me for so long. Being able to stop those thoughts will help you act. And the book identifies that perfectionism is a major barrier to confidence, particular for women. It happens for men too, but part of it is the way we're wired. Perfectionism leads to procrastination, reluctance to speak unless 100% ready, and harsh self-criticism, which we all do. So we need to learn to shift from perfection to progress, asking, did I do my best, and learn something? And it will support our confidence, the growth of our internal confidence. All right. They do talk about, which is was very intriguing to me to see this part of it, is that in their studies, and they would talk to a lot of these psychologists and professors and things like that, they identified the four confidence cousins, which is self-esteem, optimism, self-compassion, and self-efficacy. And this is how each of those work, but they all feed into the confidence muscle. And they're not the same thing, but they all feed into that. And I think by understanding each of these will help us in understanding how they all work together to help us grow in the way that we think and in the way that we act. Oh my gosh, my dumb mouse. Keep losing them. All right. So nature, nurture, and choice. Sorry for the typo, I see that. Biology and environment shape our confidence, but a significant portion is influenced by our choice and habits. Psychology, research discussed in the book suggests that roughly half of confidence may be shaped by your mindset, your behavior, and not fixed wiring. They did talk about some of the hormones that affect us. So for me, that gave me a little bit of hope in knowing that, okay, there is some stuff biologically that I can't control that is definitely affecting the way that I act, the way that I talk, the way that I move forward in my life. So they talk about serotonin. It helps this part of the brain, or this hormone helps to quiet the part of the brain called the amygdala. And this is the core necessary for moments when we need to access strong emotions quickly. So that can be a good thing and a bad thing, really. Women have been called emotional creatures, right? But in some ways, that's a really good thing, because when crises happen with our children falling, getting cut or whatever, we immediately go into action. Because we have that. Whereas it can, on the other side, it can force us to push too hard and get too emotional to where we become depressed and withdrawn and have anxiety to where we can't move. So oxytocin is the cuddle hormone, which we all love the cuddle hormone, right? In fact, I make my girls give me a 30-second hug every single day and they hate it. They fight me off. But I always count. I count when I hug them and I make them hug me because everybody needs that feeling and those oxytocins to help boost their, energy and their levels biologically. And the cuddle hormone, the desire to hug, the desire to share, to make moral decisions, it's all heavily tied to our optimism muscle. So oxytocin is flowing through our this hormone to help us in connecting with people, right? And we all want to be connected. We all want to be liked. And then the third one that they mentioned was dopamine. And inspires doing and exploring and is associated with curiosity and taking risks. And no surprise, they showed this in a study, men have more dopamine. So that can help us understand why, for them, they're just going to take the risk because they have so much of that flowing in them, where it works differently in us with our brain. So these hormones lay the groundwork we need in order to experience confidence. When dopamine, which gets us moving, is commingled with serotonin, which induces calm thoughts, and oxytocin, which generates warm, positive attitudes toward others, confidence can grow much more easily and take hold. All right. We're almost to the end, ladies. Let's see. Okay, so here are the daily confidence practices that they talk about, the takeaways from the book. Take one meaningful risk each day. I would recommend even saving this page or writing down these bullet points. So, and put this up in your office on the wall and every day read it. So take one meaningful risk every single day, whether that's to speak up, that's to ask a question you were afraid to ask, or volunteer for something that scares the crap out of you. Just do it, right? Number 2, practice good enough work instead of perfection. Perfectionism is a killer. So start focusing on the good enough aspects. Reframe your failures into learning statements. We talked about that. Journal your faults or your failures and the things that, you know, you feel like you really screwed up, and reframe those and rewrite those in your narrative. Track your small wins at the end of each day. Track two wins every single day, and see what that, when you go back in a week and you're journaling again, see how that changes and how your mind shift starts to change with that. You'll see a difference, trust me. And then the last one, use self-compassionate self-talk after mistakes, which I think is a huge one for us as women. I know I do it and I still do it. And I have to stop myself and say, okay, you did your best. You showed up. That's one positive thing. At least you showed up. Even though you were scared, you took that risk when many other people would not even take that risk, right? And so learning to tell yourself those things. Men are really good at telling themselves those things, sometimes so good that it annoys us in those meetings, right? But that's a skill, and that's actually a good thing if we just change that dichotomy in our brain. Okay. How to build up confidence in others is encourage the risk and experimentation instead of overprotecting from failures. I think as mothers, we sometimes do that with our children, is we try to protect them from failures, but they need to go through failures to build that confidence muscle and to build those actionable skills that they need to survive this world. Avoid solving every problem for others. Let them struggle productively. Praise their effort, learning, and encourage rather than only outcomes or perfection. Model your own risk-taking, recovery from mistakes, and honest self-reflection. All right. So here are the 3 principles, as I talked about in the beginning. Take action, don't ruminate, and be authentic. And I think that if we can learn to do that, especially as women, both personally and professionally, I think that we will realize how much we can do together collectively as women and individually as women. And we'll start to see some big changes. Ask for that raise. When men, they did a study that when men go and ask for a raise, they ask for 30% more than women. And oftentimes leaders have admitted that the men may not be as competent as the woman, but they choose the man because his confidence shines through, and they know that confidence will drive him further than, the rumination and the inaction that we sometimes take. So those are the main core qualities that they talk about in this book. I would love it if everyone read the book or listened to the book, and I'll start a comment in our group on LinkedIn, and I would love to see your thoughts on that, because I think that there's so much you can learn from understanding that, yes, well, we have the biology and we have the hormones and we have all those things that can maybe deter our confidence and in turn deter our action. And that affects us in our work, and it affects us at home, all those things. But I'd love to hear from you guys what your thoughts are on the biggest thing that came out that you learned from the book, and what you can take away and move forward with in your own life. So I gave you a couple challenges today to start your journal and start writing down whenever you have those negative thoughts and crossing it out and changing that. And I'm also looking at, because they did have a confidence meter test that you can take that they put together, and the website wasn't working. So I reached out to Claire and Katie to find out if they still have that quiz. So when I find that quiz, it's called the confidence code quiz. I'll send it out to everyone, but it would be interesting to kind of get a feel for where you personally feel your confidence is, right? So once I find that, I'll give that to everyone. But other than that, we've come to the end. I hope that you guys realize and get some, motivation and inspiration to take this and move forward with it in your own, planning and focus for the year, to learn that, there's a lot we can do as women. And don't let it, just because, we're women, don't let all those fears and those barriers stop you from doing what you're built to do. You're here for a reason. Your voice matters. That's the biggest thing. That is what, our biggest vision and mission with Her is that we want every woman in this industry to realize that their voice matters, which is why we spotlight a different title woman professional every single Friday. So I hope that you can see that as well. If you know of great women that you think need to be featured in Spotlight, please email them to me, because that's our whole mission, is to really share this out into the world, because it builds everybody and it helps the industry build as well. So, and gives all of us more confidence to get out there and make a change and make difference happen in our world. So thank you everyone for being here. Any questions? I'll open it up to questions. You can unmute yourself, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you so much for your time, Susan. That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And I downloaded it on Audible too. So I listened to the book and I also read it, and I got different things from it, right? So hopefully we can have more of these types of discussions, with some of the other books as we move forward this year. So send me your recommendations, send me your Spotlight nominations. So appreciate all of you. And any other questions? I'm reading some of the chats as they're coming in. I'm just making sure I don't miss a question. Oops, move that over here. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for being here. I appreciate you. I appreciate all the work that you're doing. Definitely, I'll start the post on LinkedIn and Facebook. Please share your comments of what you're learning from the book, what's standing out to you, because confidence isn't one big magic pill. Like I said, it is, small actions over time, not overthinking it, and just being your authentic self. So everyone go out there and have an awesome day, and let's connect soon. Bye, everyone.